husband was pulled over for speeding. The officer ran his license and then pulled me aside. "Ma'am, I need you to listen to me carefully. Do not go home. Get somewhere safe." I froze. My voice cracked.
"Why?"
He hesitated, eyes darting, jaw tight. "I can't explain now. It's horrifying." Then he slipped me a folded note. I opened it with trembling hands. And that was the moment I found out the shocking truth. My name is Clara Jennings. And if you think you know how this ends, stay tuned. Because what do you do when the man you share a home with is not the man you thought he was? The paper quivered in my grip. Just 5 words, scrawled in hurried ink. "You are not safe here." The world tilted. My breath caught. The roar of passing traffic faded into a tunnel of silence. I glanced back at the squad car. My husband sat behind the wheel, his hands gripping the steering wheel too tightly, his eyes locked on the rearview mirror. He didn't know about the note. He didn't know I had seen it. I folded the paper fast, slid it into my coat pocket, and forced my expression still. "Everything okay?" he called, his tone casual, but I heard the edge beneath it. The officer gave me a look, one that begged me to play along. "Yes, ma'am's fine," he said, tapping the car lightly. "Drive safe." We pulled back onto the highway. My husband's fingers drummed against the steering wheel, too steady, too controlled. I pressed my hands against my knees to stop them from shaking. What did the officer know? Why would he risk warning me? What truth could be so horrifying that he told me not to go home? I stared out the window, my reflection pale against the glass. And for the first time in our marriage, I felt like I was sitting beside a stranger. The note burned in my pocket, and I knew, whatever waited behind our front door, I couldn't walk into it blindly. Not anymore. The ride home felt endless. The hum of the tires, the rhythm of the blinker, his forced calm, every second stretched like glass about to shatter. He glanced at me twice, as if measuring something. "What did the cops say to you?" My throat tightened. "Nothing. Just told us to slow down." His eyes lingered on me a moment too long before he nodded and turned back to the road. When we pulled into the driveway, the house looked the same as always. Pale shutters, trimmed hedges, porch light glowing softly. But now it felt different, like the walls themselves carried secrets I hadn't noticed before. Inside, I went straight to the bathroom, locked the door, and unfolded the note again. "You are not safe here." The officer's words echoed, haunting. Why would he say that unless he had proof? Unless my husband was hiding something so dangerous the police couldn't say it out loud? I pulled out my phone with shaking fingers, scrolling through his messages when I heard it. Footsteps outside the bathroom door. "Clara?" His voice was low, careful. "You okay in there?" My heart hammered.
"Yeah.
Just washing up." The pause stretched. Then his footsteps receded down the hall. I stared at my phone. No messages that seemed unusual, at least not on the surface. But then I noticed something. A second messaging app I'd never seen before, hidden in a folder marked work. The app required a code. I didn't have it. But suddenly I understood the officer's warning. Something lived in that phone. In that secret space. Something the police had seen when they ran his license. I slipped the note back into my pocket and splashed water on my face, rehearsing calm in the mirror. Because whatever the truth was, it was already circling me. And if I wanted answers, I had to play the part of the unsuspecting wife, until I found out exactly what kind of man I was married to. The mask had to stay on.
For now.
That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay beside him, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing, wondering how a stranger could feel so familiar, and how the familiar could suddenly feel like a stranger. Every creak of the house made my heart race. The note pulsed in my mind. "You are not safe here." At 2 a.m., when his breathing deepened into sleep, I slid quietly from the bed. My hands shook as I slipped his phone off the nightstand. The hidden messaging app glowed back at me, locked behind a passcode. I guessed his birthday.
Wrong.
Our anniversary. Wrong again. Then I tried my birthday. It opened. The screen filled with conversations and usernames I didn't recognize. My chest tightened as I scrolled. Photos of cash stacks, coded phrases about drops and deliveries, names paired with dollar amounts. My husband wasn't chatting with coworkers. He was in the middle of something criminal, something organized. One message chilled me to the bone. Keep the wife quiet. She doesn't know yet. Don't slip. I nearly dropped the phone. I crept back to bed, heart pounding, and lay still until morning. By sunrise, I knew two things with absolute certainty. The officer was right, I couldn't go home again, not really. My husband was not just lying. He was dangerous. At breakfast, he poured coffee like nothing was wrong. You okay? You seem tense. I forced a smile. Didn't sleep well. His eyes narrowed, searching me. I gripped my mug, praying he couldn't hear the tremor in my breath. Because I wasn't ready to confront him yet. Not without a plan. Not without safety. But the truth was no longer hidden. I was living in a house with a man whose secrets could kill me. And now I had to decide, disappear quietly or play along until I found the right moment to break free. I spent the next day moving through the house like an actress on stage, every smile rehearsed, every word chosen carefully. He sat in his office with the door half closed, voice low on calls I couldn't quite make out. I kept replaying the officer's face in my mind, the urgency, the warning. He had seen something. Something that explained the files, the messages, the cash. By afternoon, I knew I couldn't survive like this much longer. I needed an exit plan. While he showered, I slipped into his office. Papers cluttered the desk, but one manila envelope caught my eye. Inside were receipts, expensive hotels, dinners, all paid in cash. But the names on the bookings weren't his. They weren't mine either. I snapped photos quickly, slipping the papers back before he could notice. My phone buzzed in my hand, a new email arriving from an unknown address. We can help you. Meet us.
Tonight.
8 p.m. corner of 7th and Main. Come alone. My blood ran cold. How did they get my email? Who were we? The door creaked behind me. I shoved the phone into my pocket just as he stepped in, towel around his shoulders. His eyes scanned the room. Then me. What are you doing in here? His voice was casual, but the weight in it pressed hard. Looking for a pen. I lied, holding one up quickly. He studied me, silence stretching until my stomach twisted. Then he smirked. Always snooping. He kissed my forehead and walked out. But I couldn't breathe. Because whether the email was a trap or a lifeline, I knew one thing. Someone else was watching. Someone else knew what I had stumbled into. And if I wanted the truth or survival, I would have to take the risk. Tonight, at 7th and Main, I would find out exactly how deep my husband's secrets went. And maybe how far they had already spread. The corner of 7th and Main looked ordinary enough. A flickering streetlight, the hum of a diner's neon sign, the faint buzz of traffic in the distance. But my pulse hammered like I was walking into a battlefield. I parked 2 blocks away, slipped the note into my pocket and walked fast, trying to look casual. Every shadow felt sharper, every sound magnified. At exactly 8 p.m., a black SUV pulled up to the curb. The window rolled down just enough for me to see the same officer who had slipped me the warning. Get in, he said quietly. We don't have much time. My instincts screamed to run, but something in his eyes, steady, urgent, human, pulled me toward the door. I slid in. He drove in silence for several blocks before speaking. Your husband isn't who you think he is. When we ran his license, his file lit up alerts from 3 federal databases. Organized crime.
Fraud.
Distribution. My stomach turned cold.
No.
There has to be a mistake. The officer shook his head. He's been under investigation for over a year. But last night we saw something new. Messages. Plans involving you. Me? My throat closed. He slid a folder across the seat. Inside were printouts, screenshots of the messages I had seen, but worse. Threads labeled with my name. Notes about accounts in my name, debts being stacked on my identity. And one line that made my blood run cold. If she finds out, she won't be a problem much longer. The SUV slowed. He pulled to the curb outside a small safe house. We can protect you, Clara. But you need to make a choice tonight. Go back to him and pretend, or stay hidden and help us bring him down. I clutched the folder, my heart shattering with every word I read. The man I had shared vows with had already written the blueprint of my betrayal. The officer's voice softened. It's your move now. But if you go back home, you may not get another chance. I stared at the folder, then at the dark sky above the safe house. And I knew my marriage was already over. The only question left was how to end it, quietly, or in the light of the entire world. I didn't sleep that night. The safe house room was quiet, but my mind roared with every lie I had swallowed, every touch I now questioned. The man I thought was my protector was plotting against me, and the world outside still saw us as the picture-perfect couple. By morning, the officer returned with coffee and a plan. We can build a case, he said, sliding the folder back toward me. But it will be stronger with your help. You've seen things. You've lived with him. You know what to look for. My hands trembled around the cup. And if he finds out, then the note I gave you will become prophecy, he said flatly. The weight of it crushed my chest, but underneath the fear, something else sparked, defiance. He had stolen my trust, my safety, my marriage. I would not let him steal my voice too. That afternoon, I agreed. We created a cover story. I'd go back home, act normal, but every document, every conversation, every suspicious movement, I'd quietly collect. When I stepped back through the front door, he looked up from the couch, remote in hand, smile too practiced. Everything okay? You were out late last night. I forced a laugh. Just errands. Lost track of time. His eyes searched mine, sharp and heavy. But after a beat, he nodded. You should have texted. I slipped into the kitchen, my pulse racing, and placed my purse down, careful to slide the small recording device deeper into its lining. The double life had begun. Every word became a performance, every glance a test. And every night, when he slept, I whispered into the recorder, dates, times, locations, details he thought were invisible. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was documenting, building. And with every secret I exposed, I moved one step closer to flipping the story. Because one day soon, he wouldn't be the man controlling the narrative. He'd be the headline. Days blurred into weeks. I perfected the role of loyal wife by day, while passing evidence to the officer at night. Bank statements, hidden receipts, snippets of conversations recorded when he thought I wasn't listening. Every file I handed over built the wall higher around him, a wall he didn't even know was closing in. But the danger sharpened. He grew suspicious. His eyes lingered on me longer. He checked my phone more often, asked pointed questions. Who are you texting? Where were you? One evening, I found him standing in the doorway, watching me cook. His voice was soft, too soft. Clara, you'd tell me if you were keeping secrets, wouldn't you? The knife in my hand stilled. I forced a smile. Of course. But his words confirmed what I already feared. He felt the shift. The officer called me the next day. We're close. A raid is coming. We just need one last piece, the ledger. We know he keeps it in the house. Find it, and this ends. That night, after he fell asleep, I crept into the basement. Boxes stacked high, dust clinging to everything. In the far corner, I found a locked metal case. My hands shook as I picked at the latch with a hairpin until it clicked. Inside, a black leather ledger. Pages filled with coded entries, dates, amounts, millions of dollars tracked. And in the margins, notes scribbled in his handwriting. I snapped photos quickly, heart racing, then slid it back into place. Upstairs, the floor creaked. My blood froze. Clara? His voice echoed down the stairwell. What are you doing? I shoved the box shut, sprinted up the steps, forcing my face into calm. Laundry, I said, holding up an empty basket. He stared, silent, his eyes cold. Then he nodded slowly and turned back toward the bedroom. But I knew. The mask was cracking. Time was running out. And soon, one of us wouldn't make it out of this house the same. You. The raid came at dawn. I was already awake, sitting at the edge of the bed, my heart pounding like thunder in my chest. He stirred beside me, muttering in his sleep, unaware of the storm about to tear through our walls. Then, pounding on the front door.
Shouts.
Police! Open up! He jolted upright, eyes wild, leaping from the bed. For one terrifying second, his gaze snapped to me. What did you do? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. The battering ram struck, and the front door splintered open. Armed officers stormed in, voices commanding, lights flashing. He fought, he shouted, he swore his innocence. But the evidence was already in their hands. My photos, my recordings, the ledger. I stood frozen in the hallway as they pulled him away in cuffs, his face twisted in disbelief, betrayal cutting deeper than steel. Clara, he shouted. You'll regret this. But I didn't move. I didn't flinch. Because in that moment, I realized regret was the one thing I had finally left behind. As the sirens faded, the officer who had warned me that night stepped forward. He handed me a simple folder. Inside was a single sheet. Witness protection intake, Clara Jennings. Your choice, he said softly. I looked down at the paper, then back at the house where I had lived blind, where lies had been served at the dinner table as casually as bread. I signed my name, because my story wasn't about being his wife anymore. It was about being free. The newspapers called it the Jennings case, a wife's silence breaks a crime syndicate. But I didn't care about the headlines. I cared about breathing again, about walking into the sunlight without wondering who stood beside me, about building a life where safe wasn't just a warning scribbled on a folded note. It was real. The man I thought I loved was gone, but the woman who had found her strength was just beginning.